We're just going to keep the action rolling here, Pokemon trainers, at the regional championships here in Warsaw, and we are going to have another epic match up for you. The players are ready, so we'll be able to jump into it very soon. But so far, the competition has been amazing. We've had a lot of very close calls, a lot of great sort of strategies in terms of switching, and a lot of shield preservation. Those seems to have been key so far today.
Yeah, let's see if those continue this match as well. Looking at the teams, I think they've been using the same playbook, but Bakemi just decided that Azumarill is the way to go, and Johnny Redchar just has chosen Shadow Venusaur. Other than that, the Pokemon in their teams are basically equal.
Yeah, I think this was a graphic we saw earlier. And again, like you're saying, 5 out of 5 are exactly the same, a little bit of a mirror, but the key difference here is the Azumarill and the Venusaur. Now, obviously, we know that the Azumarill isn't going to want to come down against that opposing Venusaur, so there's going to have to be some key positioning. Pokemon like the Noctowl as well, they're going to be able to deal well with that Venusaur and help the Azumarill out.
Yeah, looking at the teams, though, I think the Venusaur is going to struggle a bit against everything else except the Azumarill. It has okay matchup against Medicham and Lickitung and Galarian Stunfisk, as well as Sableye, but it's not as clean as with the Azumarill. Azumarill having strong matchups against Sableye, Galarian Stunfisk, Noctowl, Medicham, so I'm pretty sure Bakemi is going to play that Azumarill a lot, but I'm also expecting Johnny Redchar to recognize that and trying to find a way to get the Venusaur on this Azumarill.
Yeah, I mean, Azumarill's great. It's got that fast charge with Bubble, and then has really good coverage. You know, Play Rough can deal so much damage. Ice Beam, again, can deal with a lot of those flying-type Pokemon like the Noctowl, for example. So it's going to be interesting to see how, you know, Azumarill's going to get that energy charged up and whether it's going to be in a position where it's going to be able to try and get some good damage or possibly even a KO.
Yes, and we're going into the game 1. Let's see what the players decide to choose as their first Pokemon.
Well, coming straight out of the blocks here in Warsaw between these two players, there is a Noctowl and a Stunfisk. So we've seen Stunfisk be the downfall of Noctowl in the past with that fast-charging Rock Slide.
Yes, and Johnny Redchar immediately goes into that bulky Lickitung, starts licking down this Galarian Stunfisk. Bakemi decides to stay in, throw an Earthquake, and maybe then switch out. Let's see what he had in the back. He has a Noctowl and an Azumarill in the back, so he doesn't really have a strong answer to this Lickitung, so he decides that he can just stay in here.
Yeah, staying in, getting some good damage off with that Earthquake, but it does give Lickitung the opportunity to retaliate with this Power Whip, and it's going to go in down to the Stunfisk. Not going to do too much thanks to the bulk of the Stunfisk, and allowing it to capitalize and go for another Earthquake. Now, we saw how much damage the first one did. It might be wise to go for a shield here, or possibly it's going to survive on just a slither of HP.
Johnny decides that he can let this Lickitung go, gets the alignment back by putting in Medicham into this Galarian Stunfisk. The problem is, though, that Bakemi has 2 solid answers to that Medicham in the back, so I'm expecting him to probably load up a bit energy and then swap, and yeah, we saw that he got a Rock Slide ready, and now he's back in with the Noctowl.
There we go. And Noctowl doesn't exactly want to take one of these Ice Punches, but it does still have a lot of HP remaining. It's very bulky. It can certainly take one of these, allow Bakemi to preserve one of the shields, and allow the Noctowl to start charging up and going for one of those powerful Sky attacks. Medicham, however, just going to get the edge and get another Ice Punch off.
Yeah, with the Noctowl having normal as its second typing, it's going to be taking neutral damage from these counters from the Medicham. The Bakemi decides to just throw the Sky Deck all the way in the last second to force Medicham to shield, and now it's Medicham versus Azumarill.
Yeah, Azumarill just switching in there, going to be able to go for these bubbles. Going to take a lot of what the Medicham is going to throw its way and allowing it to just start charging up and applying pressure with something like that Play Rough, or even Ice Beam would do a little bit at this range. But the key thing here is going to be the Psychic, going to deal some good damage, and I think it's wise to go for the shield here. You want to keep your Azumarill nice and healthy to chip away at this Medicham.
Yeah, and Bakemi knows that there's still this Noctowl in the back, so he's holding on to this energy just in case Johnny decides to swap, and we saw the swap, and here comes an Ice Beam that's going to hurt this Noctowl.
Yeah, it has. But I think it's good, though, to get the switch there on the Azumarill. It did get a defense drop from the Psychic earlier. Now you've got the Stunfisk going in for another Rock Slide. Poor Noctowl is not having a nice time. Ice Beam to the face, now a Rock Slide to boot.
And now Noctowl is still throwing these wing attacks, trying to possibly, not sure if that was a mistake to not throw a move or just forcing the Bakemi to throw the energy and now get that energy back on the Medicham and putting his money on Medicham against the Azumarill.
Well, Noctowl goes down. Azumarill is back in the action. It's just going to be able to chip away at this Medicham a little bit. But you can see the energy generation happening. There's a lot going forward on this Psychic, and this is certainly going to pack a punch.
Now, looking at Bakemi's Azumarill, he has Ice Beam and Play Rough. So if he reveals that he has Play Rough, then Johnny will know for the next game that, okay, maybe my Galarian Stunfisk is pretty free to play. But Bakemi knows at this point, even Ice Beam is enough to take out the Medicham, so no point in showing that he's running Play Rough.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make, because this is a best of 3 set, so that information could force your opponent to adapt, and you don't want to give them any advantage. You can see another Ice Beam coming out from this Azumarill is going to find its mark on that Medicham and remove it from the field.
And there we go, 1-0 to Johnny Redchar.
Yeah, really interesting to see sort of the different strategies that are coming out from these players here. I mean, the Azumarill was so strong. I was really impressed by it, constantly going for these Ice Beams. I know that we really wanted to see the Play Rough into something like the Medicham here, but being able to go for the Ice Beam was able to apply a lot of pressure. It still chunked away at the Noctowl a little bit, but particularly not revealing that Play Rough, like you said, was absolutely critical going into the next game.
Yeah, and as a correction, I meant to say Bakemi got the 1-0 there, not Johnny Redchar. So we're going into the game 2 with Bakemi leading 1-0.
Yeah, and of course that little Azumarill taking that first game. We did talk a lot about it at the beginning, but to talk about some of the other Pokemon that were on that side, you know, we saw the Lickitung having a lot of longevity on the field and really stuck around, just going for those licks, constantly chipping away. If you're Johnny Redchar now, how are you going to adapt to play around that Azumarill?
I think you kind of have to start considering bringing Venusaur, or you can kind of gamble that the Azumarill might not have Hydro Pump, where that makes the Galarian Stunfisk a bit easier to play around, because all the charge moves are resisted, whereas the Earthquake still hurts a lot, even though the Azumarill is fairly bulky. So there are some options for Johnny Redchar. I'd say Venusaur has play, just trying to keep it away from Noctowl mainly.
So the positioning could be key if we're bringing in that Venusaur. You've got to protect it as well, because Noctowl's certainly very threatening. We've seen how it, throughout the entire day so far, has actually been really dominant.
Yes, that was also expected, as seen from previous regionals. It has been a really prevalent flying type Pokemon, and yeah, we've been seeing it here in Warsaw as well.
Yeah, and that's why I guess when you're team building coming into this tournament, you've got to make sure you've got some counters and some strategies against it, which is why we're seeing a lot of these ice type moves. You know, we saw Walrein come back. I'm going to talk about Walrein all weekend. It's definitely been the standout for me. I absolutely love it. I want to see more Walrein. But again, even with the Azumarill having the utility with that Ice Beam, just making sure that it has something, even though it is neutral, it's still just got utility to be able to deal with a lot of these different Pokemon and a lot of the grass Pokemon that are emerging as well.
Going back to the game 1 at the lead matchup, when Bakemi led Galarian Stunfisk into the Noctowl, Johnny decided to swap into Lickitung. That was a good notice from Bakemi that he still had the Azumarill in the back to deal with the Noctowl later, so he doesn't need to worry about switching, because he can keep the Azumarill, make sure that he wins, because he didn't have a solid answer to the Lickitung safe swap. He could just stay in with the Galarian Stunfisk, make sure that the Galarian Stunfisk beats the Lickitung, and then he still keeps the Azumarill for the Noctowl in the back.
Yep, that's really true. And it's interesting when I think you come up against mirrors in these matches. I know from a lot of the other games as well, you always have to have a strategy against, you know, key cores in the meta, but also against your own team, particularly if you are running pretty standard Pokemon, like particularly the bottom 4 that we're looking at here, plus the little Sableye in the top left. These are all Pokemon that you will have prepared against. You're going to have a strategy against them and have a way to utilize them yourself. And I think sometimes in the mirror, in any game, there's always 50-50s, there's close calls and dice rolls, but I think when it's the mirror, those kinds of odds are even more stacked.
Yes, and especially if you happen to lead into a mirror matchup. So, for example, pretty common, we've seen a couple of times today, Galarian Stunfisk versus Galarian Stunfisk, which comes all the way down to who lands the Earthquake. And yeah, those usually when you start building a team, you try to think about how do you deal with different kinds of teams of 6, and you could probably expect to face something similar to your own.
Yeah, and I think that's why Azumarill's been so good in this matchup, because where it is such a heavy mirror, having that slightly different Pokemon to kind of shake things up a little bit and throw a spanner in the works, Azumarill can just come in and go for that bubble, apply a lot of coverage pressure, whether it's with the Water Fast move or the Ice or Fairy type move as well. So it definitely has a lot of coverage there. You can see our players as well kind of taking the time to between games 1 and game 2 to really finalize their strategies as we kind of get ready going into this game 2. I mean, at this point in the competition as a competitor yourself, how do you kind of handle your mental knowing that you're getting so close to that kind of day 2 of competition? Is it harder with the pressure, or are you able to kind of just focus and look towards the end goal?
Yeah, the pressure is definitely on the players, but these are also professional players and real the top of the top, so they used to the pressure in grassroots tournaments in previous regionals, so they've just had to prep up, be ready for basically anything, and just sometimes it's also a bit of luck.
Yeah, that's always true. Sometimes it is a little bit of luck in Pokemon. And you can see we're getting ready to jump into our very next game here. Game 2 is ready, and we're going to see who's going to come out victorious in this mirror match. Will it be the team featuring Azumarill or the one with that cheeky Venusaur on it? Coming out into the blocks, though, we have got Azumarill and Stunfisk. So Azumarill looking happy to start going for those bubbles.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, now that Johnny Redchar doesn't know if Azumarill has Hydro Pump or not, so we are going to probably see here whether he's going to start shielding these possible Hydro Pumps.
Well, first of all, thanks to Mudshot, it's got a nice, good energy regeneration here. We're going to be able to go for a nice, powerful Earthquake into that opposing Azumarill. Does a good chunk, but no shields necessary. You can see the energy regeneration coming up on Azumarill as well, and you're going to go for that Ice Beam here. Here
comes the Ice Beam. This could be a Hydro Pump, but Johnny decides to call the bait. And, well, he still can't be sure whether there is a Hydro Pump, but at this point, he can just trust that the Bakemi is going to throw more Ice Beams.
Yeah, an Earthquake coming out once again from this Stunfisk. The Azumarill isn't going to shield again, going to take a good chunk of damage, but is still hanging in there. Has a lot of energy to go for another charge move of its own. It's going to be that Ice Beam once again.
This is good for Bakemi because Johnny has the Shadow Venusaur in the back, so getting rid of this Azu and avoiding the Venusaur is a big thing for him. But there's still an issue that he needs to get his Galarian Stunfisk on the opposing Noctowl, but Johnny decides to swap into Venusaur. Now Bakemi gets the Noctowl into the Venusaur. This is just looking good for Bakemi.
Yeah, absolutely set up here. Able to get, a shield burn as well on that Venusaur by going for another Ice Beam. And yes, you have lost your lead Pokemon, but now Noctowl's in and going to have an absolute breeze of a time against this Venusaur. Venusaur is going to try, though, and go for its charge move into the opposing Noctowl. It is, however, going to shield up against that Sludge Bomb, but you can see the energy regeneration. Sky Attack is primed and ready to go.
Noctowl took a little bit of extra energy there, so he knows that this Sky Attack will take out the Venusaur, but now he has also loaded energy for whatever is in the back.
Yes, and the last Pokemon going to come forward. Is it going to be that Stunfisk? Maybe try and get a little bit of damage. I can't remember how much energy it already had stockpiled and ready. But as you can see, Rock Slide is actually accessible. But we can see, first of all, Noctowl's going to get the edge. Going to be able to go for its charge move first with no Protect Shields. Unfortunately, Stunfisk isn't going to get the opportunity to retaliate.
One matchup too much to actually end up in a charge move prior event, which Noctowl pretty easily wins in this matchup. And now it's one Noctowl against another, but the other one has a shield, so this seems like a good situation for Bakemi.
And just like we said at the beginning of the game, shield preservation really has pulled through in this tournament so far. And you can see again, if you're Bakemi, having that one extra shield gives you that little bit of breathing room. We can see the charge move coming in from the opposing Noctowl. Again, Noctowl's going to be able to take this really well on Bakemi's side, but you have that shield for the next one. You have that added advantage as you can go for the charge move of your own.
And here comes the last Sky Attack. This will take out Johnny Redchar's Noctowl, and Bakemi will be moving on to... Still survives.
It's just able to survive, but of course that shield is in play.
Bakemi decides to let go because he still has the Galarian Stunfisk in the back, and that's...
I forgot about that little Stunfisk hiding out. I know it's very close to the ground and its strategy is to be disguised, but it'd be nice to remember it. But here we go, Rock Slide coming in is going to be able to have the last hurrah for Bakemi here and is able to get the KO against the opposing Noctowl.
Good place from Bakemi, getting into top 16 with this win, and Johnny Redchar will be moving into the losers bracket.
Yep, of course, Johnny Redchar's not out of the competition by any means. You can have that Cinderella story coming through the losers bracket. But huge congratulations to Bakemi there. And again, I love the kind of flex when you finish a match and you still have a shield remaining.
Yes, that is always a good. In addition to having all three Pokemon still alive or both shields, those are always situations when you feel confident in your skills.
Exactly, and of course now the eye really is on the prize for these players, particularly as they're advancing through the winners bracket. You're getting one step closer each time to not only tomorrow's competition, but to our amazing prizes and that champion title. And particularly as Pokemon Go is still one of these relatively new competitive sports out in Pokemon, and the circuit is very, very up and coming at the moment, to be able to get a regional title under your belt so early on would be an amazing accomplishment.
Definitely, and every player in this tournament has their eyes on the possible trip to Yokohama next August, and